Princess Valera of the Arctarian Empire stared out of the tall, curved window of her private chamber. Outside, the stars shimmered like diamonds, stretching endlessly across the void of space. The Arctarian Empire had grown powerful, but it was not without rivals. Across the galaxy, humans of the Sol Alliance were rising. They were clever, adaptable, and bold, a combination many alien species feared. And now Valera was to marry one of them. It was not love that led her to this marriage. It was duty. Her people needed peace, and the Council had decided that an alliance through marriage was the only way to ensure it. She would marry Commander Elias Kane, a human general whose reputation for tactical brilliance had already spread across several systems. Valera had never met a human in person. In Arctarian eyes, humans were chaotic and unpredictable. They were aggressive when cornered and stubborn in ways her people could not understand. Many Arctarians whispered that this marriage could be dangerous, that humans could not be trusted. Yet, her council insisted. The ceremony was to take place on the neutral station Aurelia, a massive structure orbiting a gas giant on the edge of contested space. Valera adjusted the folds of her ceremonial gown, a shimmering silver that reflected the dim lights of the chamber. She took a deep breath. This was her life now, an ambassador of peace tied to a human she barely knew. A soft chime announced her escort's arrival. A guard bowed and gestured for her to follow. The corridors of the station were busy with delegates from multiple species, all moving with purpose. Ships of various shapes and sizes were docked at the station, some sleek and elegant, others massive and imposing. Yet among all this, the human ship stood out, not because it was large, but because it carried an air of quiet efficiency. Valera entered the central hall. The room was grand, with high ceilings and banners representing every empire attending. Delegates whispered among themselves as they watched her enter. Then came the humans. Elias Kane stepped forward, his uniform simple but immaculate. He was tall, with dark hair that fell slightly over his forehead, and eyes that seemed to see everything at once. He bowed slightly, but there was no grand show. There were no elaborate ceremonies from his side, just presence. Commanding presence, Princess Valera, he said, his voice calm but firm. It is an honor to meet you. Valera studied him carefully. There was no arrogance in him, no attempt to impress with wealth or power, and yet somehow she felt an odd sense of reassurance. This human seemed different from the stories she had heard. The honor is mine, Commander Kane, she replied, her voice steady though her heart beat faster than usual. The ceremony itself was brief but solemn. Vows were exchanged, promises of cooperation and loyalty made. Cameras floated around, recording every moment for the delegates. And then, with the simple clasping of hands, the marriage was official. Valera was now bound to a human, not just as a political tool, but as a partner in shaping the future of two empires. After the ceremony, Valera was escorted to the human ship. It was smaller than the Arctarian vessels she was used to, but it was clearly efficient. The corridors were lined with panels and displays, all glowing softly. She could hear the low hum of the ship's engines, steady and strong. Elias walked beside her, speaking quietly. I know this is unusual for you. For both of us, really. But I promise I take this responsibility seriously, not just for peace, but for everyone who relies on it. Valera nodded, impressed by his sincerity. I hope your actions match your words, Commander. My people are cautious. They do not forgive mistakes easily. Elias smiled faintly. Neither do mine. I understand completely. Over the next few hours, she observed him interact with his crew. He spoke to every officer personally, asking about their concerns and listening carefully. When minor disputes arose among the humans, he mediated calmly, never raising his voice, yet commanding respect with every word. Valera had expected arrogance or chaos. Instead, she found patience, intelligence, and quiet authority. Later, in the ship's observation lounge, she finally asked the question that had been on her mind since her arrival. Commander Kane, she said, humans are often described as unpredictable, reckless even. How do you see yourself in this alliance? He leaned against the railing, looking out at the endless stars. We are unpredictable, yes, but that comes from our adaptability. Humans survive in every environment we face because we learn fast and act decisively. It may look chaotic to you, but there is always strategy behind it. I promise you, I will use that strategy to protect this alliance, and you. Valera studied him. trying to detect any hint of deception. There was none. His confidence was calm, rooted not in arrogance but in understanding and experience. For the first time, she wondered if humans were truly what her empire had feared, or if they were something more. Something extraordinary. The ship's alarm sounded briefly, a test signal from the station's security systems. Elias dismissed it with a flick of his hand, but he remained alert, scanning the readings. Even in this minor moment, Valira noticed his instinctive attention to detail. He noticed things others might miss. As the evening progressed, she shared a meal with him and his senior officers. Conversations flowed easily, blending discussions of strategy, diplomacy, and even humor. Valira found herself laughing at a few human jokes, a rarity for someone of her formal upbringing. She realized that humans had a way of connecting that transcended protocol and hierarchy. When the meal ended, Valira retired to her quarters. She gazed out at the stars again, her thoughts racing. She had married a human for peace as instructed by her council. But something had shifted within her. This man, this human, was not what she expected. He was calm yet commanding, clever yet compassionate. He carried the air of someone who could survive and even thrive in situations that would overwhelm others. A soft chime signaled a message from her Arctarian advisors. They wanted immediate reports, updates on the human general. Valira paused, then typed her response. He is different. More than I expected. I will observe and report further. As she sent the message, she felt a mixture of apprehension and curiosity. The galaxy was vast, full of danger and uncertainty. Yet for the first time in her life, she wondered if humanity, through this one human, could truly be a force for change. Sleep came slowly. Images of stars, ships, and the human general's steady eyes danced behind her eyelids. She knew this was only the beginning. Tomorrow she would see him in action, not just as a diplomat, but perhaps as something far more formidable. The stars of the Arctarian frontier stretched endlessly before the human ship, as it glided smoothly through space. Princess Valira stood beside the observation window, her eyes tracing the faint outlines of distant planets. The galaxy was vast, and yet tensions had made it feel small, dangerous, and fragile. Commander Kane, she said, turning to the man standing beside her. How do you see this mission? The Council has made it clear that the border systems are critical. Losing even one could ignite war. Elias Kane's eyes narrowed slightly as he examined the display in front of them. It's not just about holding territory, he said thoughtfully. It's about showing what humans and our allies can do when we work together. If we protect the system effectively, it could serve as an example to other factions, and sometimes an example is worth more than a fleet of ships. Valira studied him carefully. The calm confidence in his voice was almost irritating to her. She had expected someone brash, reckless, or at least overconfident. Yet Elias was neither. He was careful, methodical, and always thinking 2 steps ahead. Their mission was straightforward on paper: establish a peacekeeping presence in the Ziffer system, a cluster of resource-rich planets at the frontier between Arctarian and rival alien territories. However, in practice, it was anything but simple. The first sign of trouble came shortly after they arrived. A small scout ship sent from a nearby system went missing. Communication attempts failed, and the disappearance was reported to be near the border of a hostile alien faction known for raiding trade routes. Valira felt a twinge of worry. Are we expecting an attack? She asked. Elias shook his head. Not necessarily, but we have to prepare for anything. A missing scout could be a simple accident or the first move in a larger plan. We'll find out soon enough. Valira watched as he convened a strategy meeting with his officers. Humans, Arctarians, and other allied species were gathered in the ship's command room, the air buzzing with tension. Elias spoke with clarity, directing attention to the key points of the mission: protecting civilians, securing supply lines, and ensuring no unnecessary confrontations occurred. He listened to every officer, weighing their opinions before making decisions. When disagreements arose, he did not dismiss them, but found creative compromises. Valira found herself studying him, realizing that this human leader had a way of uniting diverse groups under a single vision, a skill far beyond mere diplomacy. The first skirmish came sooner than expected. Patrol drones reported multiple small vessels approaching a mining station on one of the frontier planets. They were alien ships, sleek and armed, yet lightly organized. The humans and Arctarians moved quickly to intercept. Valira watched from the command bridge, heart pounding. The aliens expected chaos. They assumed humans would panic or react with brute force. But Elias's response was precise. Deploy drones in a circular pattern around the station. He instructed calmly. Use decoys to confuse their targeting systems. Our goal is to protect the station, not destroy them. Draw them in, then contain. The humans executed his orders flawlessly, coordinating with Arctarian forces in real time. Small explosions dotted the area as drones intercepted enemy fire, yet the station remained unharmed. Elias moved from one terminal to another, issuing commands, checking data, and adjusting tactics as the situation evolved. Valira felt something stir inside her: amazement, admiration, and perhaps the first spark of genuine pride. Humans were supposed to be chaotic and unpredictable. Instead, she saw strategy, foresight, and calm authority. By the time the alien ships retreated, the damage had been minimal, and casualties were zero. The crew cheered quietly while Valira simply stood stunned. Elias had turned a potentially disastrous situation into a demonstration of human brilliance. Later, in the quiet of the observation deck, Valira asked the question that had been on her mind since the battle. "Commander, your tactics? They were exceptional. How did you anticipate their moves so well?" Elias leaned against the railing, eyes reflecting distant stars. "Observation, experience, and imagination. I study the way opponents think, how they react under pressure. Then I create a plan that guides them into choices I can manage. Humans survive by thinking ahead. That's our nature," Valira nodded slowly. She had read about human ingenuity, but witnessing it in real time was something else entirely. She realized she had underestimated them, underestimated him. The following days brought more challenges. Alien factions tested the humans' resolve with small raids, sabotage, and threats. Each time Elias responded not with anger or fear, but with calm, creative solutions that minimized conflict while asserting authority. One day, a group of Arctarian soldiers approached Valira. They spoke in hushed tones. "Your human husband. He is remarkable," one said. "I expected him to be reckless, perhaps arrogant. But he has proven himself time and again. We did not believe humans could act like this." Valira smiled faintly, realizing her own thoughts mirrored theirs. She had come to respect Elias not only as a commander but as a human being. His strength was not just in combat, but in his mind, his judgment, and his care for others. Yet, not all was smooth. Some Arctarian officers still doubted him. They questioned his decisions, whispered about human unpredictability, and resisted following orders. Elias handled them as he had handled every challenge, with patience, reason, and occasionally, firm demonstration of his logic. A tense moment arrived when a convoy carrying essential supplies was trapped near the border. Alien raiders had blockaded the route, demanding surrender. Arctarian officers panicked, insisting on a full retreat. Elias considered the situation, then spoke. "Retreat is not the only option. We have drones, long-range scanners, and terrain knowledge. We can create a path that appears blocked but actually allows the convoy to pass safely. Trust me, or at least trust the plan." Valira watched as humans and Arctarians worked together under his guidance. Decoys were set, paths were cleared, and the convoy moved undetected through dangerous territory. By the end, supplies reached their destination and the raiders were none the wiser. "That was incredible," Valira whispered when they were alone. "You turned a hopeless situation into a success without firing a shot." Elias shrugged modestly. "It's what we do. Sometimes the greatest victories are the ones no one sees. People survive because they don't panic, because they adapt." Valira realized she was learning from him too. Humans did not rely on brute force alone. They relied on intelligence, flexibility, and courage. And in that, she saw the true power of her new alliance. Night fell on the Zephyr system, painting the frontier planets in soft shades of blue and gold. Valira stood outside the ship, staring at the horizon. She could feel the weight of responsibility pressing on her shoulders. The peace of entire empires rested on their cooperation. And yet she no longer felt fear. She had seen Elias Kane in action, and she knew he was extraordinary. The galaxy was a dangerous place, full of unpredictable factions and looming threats. But for the first time, Valira felt a glimmer of hope. If humans were capable of thinking, acting, and leading like this, perhaps peace was possible. As she returned to her quarters that night, Valira couldn't help but smile. Her marriage had started as a duty, a political necessity, but she was beginning to see it as something more, a partnership with someone who might just change the course of the galaxy. Little did she know, the challenges were only beginning. The minor skirmishes were just the prelude. Soon she would witness Elias not just as a strategist, but as a force of nature in a battle that would shake entire star systems. The Zifar system trembled with tension. Reports of a massive alien coalition approaching the border had reached the command bridge. Entire fleets were mobilizing. This was not a minor skirmish. It was a full-scale invasion. Princess Valira stood beside Commander Elias Kane, her hands gripping the railing as she watched the blinking lights of the battle grid. Her heart pounded. She had seen his strategy in smaller conflicts, but now the stakes were higher. Civilian colonies, vital supply lines, and countless lives depended on his decisions. "Commander," she said, her voice steady despite the fear rising in her chest, "they outnumber us." "By what margin exactly?" Elias scanned the data with a calm expression. "They have nearly double our ships. Their fleet is large but not coordinated. Numbers alone do not guarantee victory. Watch and learn. They will underestimate us, and that will be their mistake." Valira's eyes narrowed. Humans were always described as unpredictable, and now she saw it in action. Elias was calm, almost casual, yet his mind moved faster than any alien fleet commander she had ever studied. The first phase of the battle began. Alien vessels advanced in tight formations, confident that sheer force would overwhelm the smaller human Arctarian fleet. Yet Elias had already anticipated their movements. "Deploy the drones in concentric patterns around the fleet," he instructed. "Focus on decoys first. Let them strike at false targets while our main forces flank from the sides. Timing is everything." The drones sprang into action. Small, nimble, and almost invisible, they created confusion among the alien ranks. Explosions erupted in the distance, giving the illusion that human forces were larger than they were. Valira's jaw dropped. She had never seen such precise orchestration. Every move had a purpose. Every decision was calculated. The humans and their allies moved as one, almost as if guided by a single mind. "Now," Elias said, pointing to the tactical map. "Flank from the northern corridor. The alien rear is exposed, no shields. Strike there and force a split. They won't see it coming." The fleet moved as he commanded. Alien vessels were caught off guard. Ships that had been advancing confidently now found themselves surrounded and disoriented. Valira's stomach twisted with awe and fear. Her human husband was rewriting the rules of war before her eyes, but it wasn't just tactics. Elias thought of everything. Civilian transport ships were scattered across the battlefield, some trapped in the chaos, while the fleet executed the attack. Elias personally coordinated rescue operations. Smaller ships were dispatched to shield the civilians, and drones were redirected to clear debris and protect escape routes. Valira felt a surge of pride. He wasn't just a commander, he was a protector, a thinker, and a leader who valued life even in the midst of war. She had expected humans to fight recklessly, to throw themselves into chaos. Instead, she saw strategy, compassion, and precision. Hours passed and the battle raged. Aliens adapted quickly, but so did Elias. He anticipated their adjustments, countered them, and forced them into decisions that worked in his favor. Every step, every maneuver was executed with grace under pressure. "Commander Kane," one Arctarian officer said nervously, "their numbers are immense. How can we possibly hold them?" Elias smiled faintly without looking away from the display. "We don't hold them by numbers. We hold them by choices. They think they control the battle, but we control their options. Watch carefully." And then Valira saw it. The humans and their allies executed a series of maneuvers that no alien commander could have predicted. The enemy fleet fractured, confused, and vulnerable. Ships that had seemed invincible fell into carefully planned traps, while friendly forces struck where they were strongest. One particularly daring move stunned the Arctarian officers. Elias directed a small fleet to appear vulnerable near a critical planetary outpost. The alien coalition attacked eagerly, only to find themselves surrounded by hidden forces. The outpost remained unharmed, and the enemy suffered significant losses without ever reaching it. Valira felt her heart leap. She had expected brilliance, but this was genius. He moved like a god of war, commanding respect, fear, and awe with every decision. She realized that humans, for all their supposed recklessness, had something no other species possessed: an instinctive ability to turn chaos into opportunity. The battle reached its climax when the alien flagship tried a desperate move to break through the blockade. Elias anticipated it. He directed a small squadron to intercept, while the main fleet forced the flagship into a narrow corridor between asteroid fields. The enemy ship struggled to maneuver, and in a brilliant display of strategy, Elias used gravity wells to trap it. Valeria watched, wide-eyed, as the flagship was forced to surrender. The alien coalition, seeing their command vessel captured, began retreating in disarray. The battle was over. The human Arctarian fleet had won against overwhelming odds. And throughout it all, Elias Kane had led with a combination of intelligence, courage, and empathy that left every observer in awe. When the battle ended, Valeria approached him on the bridge. She could hardly contain her admiration. "You were incredible," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "I've never seen anything like that. Not even in the histories of my own people." Elias turned to her, tired but smiling. "It was not me alone. Every officer, every pilot, every soldier played their part. Humans survive by working together, by thinking ahead, by valuing life even in conflict. That is what makes us strong." Valeria shook her head, still stunned. "It's more than strength. You moved like a god of war. Every step, every maneuver, perfect. Calm, precise, unstoppable." Elias chuckled softly. "I am not a god. I am a human. And humans are persistent, adaptable, and sometimes foolishly brave. That combination works better than most think." For the first time, Valeria felt a deep personal admiration, not just for his skills but for his character. Humans had always been underestimated. She had seen arrogance, fear, and prejudice in the eyes of other species. But now, standing beside Elias Kane, she understood. Humans were extraordinary, not just because of their tactics, but because of their heart. News of the victory spread quickly. Across the frontier, aliens whispered in disbelief. How had a human commander led such a small fleet to triumph against their coalition, even among Arctarian officers who had doubted him? Respect replaced skepticism. Valeria watched as her husband coordinated the aftermath, rescuing stranded civilians, repairing damaged stations, and attending to his crew. He did not celebrate victory with pomp or arrogance. He simply ensured that everyone was safe, that order was restored, and that lessons were learned. That night, as the stars of the Zephyr system twinkled in silent approval, Valeria stood at the observation deck once more. She could not stop thinking about what she had seen. Elias Kane, the human she had married for peace, had become a living legend in her eyes. Not because he sought glory, but because he embodied everything that made humans remarkable. Courage, intelligence, adaptability, and compassion, she whispered to herself, almost in awe. "I married a human for peace, and now I see him as a god of war." The battle was only one step. The galaxy remained dangerous, full of factions eager to exploit weakness. But for the first time, Valeria felt hope. With humans like Elias Kane at the forefront, perhaps peace was not just a dream. Perhaps the galaxy had underestimated them for far too long. And somewhere deep inside, Valeria knew that what she had witnessed was only the beginning. Humans were not just fighters, they were thinkers, protectors, and leaders. And she would see in the days to come just how far their brilliance could reach. The stars outside seemed to shimmer in approval, as if the universe itself recognized the birth of a legend. The Zephyr system was quiet now. The remnants of the alien fleet had retreated, and the frontier planets slowly returned to life. Colonists repaired stations, trade routes reopened, and families reunited. Yet Princess Valeria knew the true challenge was only beginning. She stood beside Commander Elias Kane on the observation deck of his flagship. The stars stretched endlessly, reflecting the calm after the storm. But the weight of responsibility still pressed on both of them. The victory had been impressive, but it had also drawn attention. Across the galaxy, whispers of human brilliance spread like wildfire. Some praised it while others feared it. Valeria turned to Elias, studying him. "You won the battle," she said quietly. "But what comes next? The councils of the Arctarian Empire and the Sol Alliance will want answers. Peace will not maintain itself," Elias nodded. "I know. That's why the next phase is just as important as the battle itself. Winning is easy. Holding peace, that requires patience, trust, and understanding." Valeria watched as he moved through the ship, coordinating teams, reviewing reports, and meeting with officers from multiple species. It was not a display of power, but a display of careful leadership. Humans, she realized, did not need to dominate to be respected. They earned it through wisdom and action. The first task was the rehabilitation of the Zephyr colonies. Many planets had minor damage, and the local populations were frightened. Elias personally supervised reconstruction efforts, ensuring that Arctarian engineers worked alongside human crews. Civilians saw him not as a commander, but as a protector. One day, while visiting a colony, Valera saw him intervene in a tense situation. A group of alien traders and local workers had argued over resources, voices raised and tempers flaring. Before it escalated into violence, Elias stepped forward. "Everyone," he said calmly, "we have one goal here, safety and prosperity for all. Let's find a solution together, not fight over blame." He listened to each side carefully, asking questions and suggesting compromises. By the end, both parties were satisfied. Valera realized that this was another kind of battle, one fought with words, reasoning, and empathy rather than weapons. Elias was winning it just as effectively. Later in the ship's council chamber, Valera joined a meeting with Arctarian advisors. They had come to assess the humans' role in the recent victory. Some were still wary, questioning Elias's methods. "He is human," one counselor said sharply. "We do not fully understand him. How can we trust him to represent our empire?" Valera held up a hand. "I have observed him.
He is more than capable."
His strategies saved our colonies, protected our people, and even kept our allies united. We underestimate him at our own risk." Elias, seated at the head of the table, added quietly, "I do not seek to dominate, nor to overshadow your empire. My goal is simple: to ensure safety, to protect life, and to maintain peace. That requires cooperation, not conquest." The council fell silent. Even those skeptical could not deny the logic, the sincerity, or the results. Valera noticed subtle nods among the advisors. Respect for humans and for Elias was growing. In the following weeks, Valera observed another remarkable trait: his ability to inspire. Soldiers and engineers, humans and Arctarians alike, rallied behind his vision. He encouraged collaboration, innovation, and personal responsibility. No one felt forced to follow him. They chose to. Valera herself was inspired. She had married him for peace as duty demanded. But now she found herself learning from him. Humans had a way of approaching challenges differently, creative, adaptive, and fearless in the face of uncertainty. She realized that this partnership was no longer political alone. It was personal, built on admiration and trust. Yet challenges remained. Not all Arctarians welcomed this new era. A small faction opposed human influence, fearing loss of power and tradition. Valera discovered their quiet scheming, attempts to undermine Elias, spread doubt among the colonies, and regain control. One evening, she confronted him in private. "Commander, some of my people are not ready to accept your methods. They plot behind our backs." Elias looked thoughtful. "I expected as much. Change always brings resistance, but we cannot let fear dictate our actions. We must lead by example, not intimidation." Valera nodded. "And if they act against us? Then we respond carefully, decisively, and fairly. Humans solve problems by understanding them first. Force is a last resort, not the first." Her admiration grew. This was no mere general. He was a leader, a diplomat, and a protector all in one. She felt pride, but also a quiet awe. She had married a human for peace, but she had gained a partner capable of shaping the future of the galaxy. Days later, a diplomatic summit was called to formalize the new alliance. Delegates from several species gathered, wary and tense. Elias and Valera presented plans for joint governance, shared resources, and mutual defense. He spoke with clarity, humility, and vision. Aliens who had once doubted humans now listened intently. Valera watched the reactions. Eyes widened in surprise, whispers of admiration filled the chamber. And even the most skeptical counselors nodded at his proposals. After the summit, Valera stood with him in private. "You have not only fought battles with strategy and courage," she said softly. "You have won hearts as well." Elias smiled faintly. "Peace is not achieved through fear or force. It is achieved through understanding, trust, and sometimes patience. Humans survive by learning, adapting, and listening. That is what I hope to show." Valera realized that this was the true power of humans, not their strength or numbers or technology, but their ability to think, to adapt, and to inspire. She had seen him battle like a god of war. Now she saw him build peace like a master strategist. In the quiet hours of the night, as the stars of Zifar twinkled beyond the ship's viewports, Valera reflected on everything she had witnessed. She had married a human to secure peace for her empire. She had expected a political alliance, perhaps a necessary inconvenience. Instead, she found herself beside someone extraordinary, someone who fought with brilliance, led with wisdom, and protected life with compassion. Humans, she realized, were far more than the galaxy believed, and this one human, her husband, was changing everything. Yet she knew the galaxy would continue to challenge them. Resistance, fear, and jealousy would always exist. But with Elias Kane by her side, she felt ready. She had married for peace, but she had gained hope. She had married a human capable of guiding the galaxy toward unity and understanding. And somewhere deep in her heart, she understood the truth she had long avoided. Her life and the galaxy itself would never be the same. The stars outside shimmered as if acknowledging it, a quiet witness to the dawn of a new era. Valera turned to Elias, a soft smile on her lips. "You are more than I ever imagined. I do not just respect you, Commander, I admire you." Elias looked at her with quiet warmth. "And I could not do this without you, Valera. Not as a partner, not as an ally. Your courage, wisdom, and trust make this possible." For the first time, the political marriage felt real. Not a duty, but a true partnership. The galaxy was dangerous, unpredictable, and often cruel. But together they could face anything. The Galactic Summit was unlike any Valera had ever attended. Delegates from dozens of species filled the Grand Hall, each representing civilizations with centuries of history, tradition, and pride. The room hummed with tension and cautious curiosity. For many, humans were still a mystery, unpredictable, bold, and often underestimated. Yet they were here now, central to the future of the galaxy. Princess Valera stood beside Commander Elias Kane, her hand resting lightly on his arm. Together they had survived battles, saved colonies, and inspired countless beings across multiple star systems. And now, the task was no longer military. It was diplomatic, delicate, and perhaps even harder than any battlefield. Elias scanned the room calmly. He did not appear intimidated, nor did he need to. Humans thrived on challenges, on situations where careful thought and adaptability mattered more than raw power. He had learned, through years of experience, that leadership was not about showing strength. It was about inspiring confidence. The summit began with speeches from various species, each expressing concern, skepticism, or outright distrust. Some Arctarian counselors still muttered doubts about humans' ability to lead and negotiate fairly. Valera felt a flicker of unease, but Elias did not. He simply waited for his turn, confident that results and honesty would speak louder than fear. When it came, his words were measured, clear, and purposeful. "We are here," he said, "not as conquerors but as partners. We do not seek dominance, nor do we seek to impose our ways. Humans survive and thrive because we adapt, we learn, and we value life, not just our own but the lives of others. That is the foundation on which we propose this alliance. Mutual respect, shared knowledge, and cooperation for the benefit of all." He outlined plans for joint governance, shared resources, defense coordination, and open trade routes. He spoke of the victories in the Zifar system, emphasizing not military conquest, but the protection of civilians, collaboration between species, and the power of clever strategy over brute force. As Valera observed the delegates, she saw something remarkable. Eyes that had been narrowed in suspicion widened in surprise. Whispers filled the room. Even the most skeptical counselors could not deny the logic, fairness, and clarity of his plan. Humans had a way of turning obstacles into opportunities, of earning trust where fear had prevailed. After hours of discussion, debate, and careful negotiation, the summit concluded with an agreement that would formally establish a lasting peace and alliance among the galaxy's major powers. The delegates stood, some clapping, some bowing, and some simply staring in stunned admiration. Humans had earned their place, not through fear or intimidation, but through wisdom, courage, and integrity. Valera felt a deep sense of pride. She had married a human for peace, but she had gained so much more, a partner whose brilliance, courage, and moral strength had changed the course of the galaxy. As the delegates departed, she and Elias walked through the grand corridors of the summit hall. Ships prepared to leave, carrying representatives back to their home systems, and the air was filled with hope and cautious optimism. "You were amazing," Valera said softly, glancing at him. "Not just in battle, but here among these diplomats and leaders. You've done something incredible." Elias smiled, though there was a hint of fatigue in his eyes. "I didn't do it alone. Humans and Arctarians alike, everyone contributed. Leadership is not about one person. It's about guiding others, inspiring them, and helping them see what they are capable of." Valera nodded. She had seen that guidance in action countless times. In battle, he anticipated every move, every risk, every possible outcome. In diplomacy, he listened, understood, and built trust where it had never existed before. Humans were supposed to be chaotic, unpredictable, and reckless, but Elias Kane had shown that human ingenuity went far beyond that. The journey back to the Zephyr colonies was quiet but full of reflection. Valera spent her time walking through the ship with him, observing his interactions with crew members and civilians. He treated every being with respect, listened patiently, and offered guidance when needed. The galaxy might fear humans for their boldness, but Elias had shown that humanity's greatest strength lay in heart, mind, and courage combined. At one of the frontier colonies, Valera watched Elias personally oversee the reconstruction of a small station. Children waved at him and adults approached with gratitude. Every handshake, every smile, every simple act of kindness spoke volumes. Valera realized that humans inspired loyalty not by fear, but by compassion and competence. Later, as they stood together on the observation deck, gazing at the stars, Valera spoke quietly. "You have changed everything. My people, these colonies, the galaxy itself. I married a human for peace, but I see now, you've brought hope where there was fear. You've made the impossible seem possible." Elias glanced at her, a gentle smile on his face. "It's not just me. It's every human, every ally willing to stand together. We survive and thrive because we learn, adapt, and care for one another. That is the power we bring to the galaxy. And you, your courage, your wisdom, and your willingness to see beyond fear, made this possible too." Valera felt a warmth in her chest, a mix of admiration, respect, and something deeper. This was no longer a political alliance, no longer a marriage built solely for duty. It had become a partnership of equals, of hearts, minds, and shared purpose. In the following weeks, the galaxy slowly adjusted to the new reality. Trade routes reopened, conflicts that had simmered for decades were peacefully resolved, and the reputation of humans as brilliant, resourceful, and compassionate leaders spread across star systems. Aliens who had once doubted humanity now sought collaboration. Valera saw it everywhere, the way humans inspired others, the way they turned challenges into opportunities, the way they led not by intimidation but by example. And at the center of it all was Elias Kane. Not a conqueror, not a tyrant, but a hero in every sense. Strategic, courageous, and kind. One quiet evening, Valera and Elias stood on the observation deck, watching the gentle glow of a nearby planet. "You have done more than I imagined," Valera said softly. "You've not only led humans and Arctarians to victory, you've built something lasting. A galaxy-wide alliance, hope where there was fear, and hearts that once doubted now follow you willingly." Elias looked out at the stars, thoughtful. "Humans are extraordinary, but not because we are stronger or smarter than others. We adapt, we learn, and we care, and sometimes all it takes is one person to show others what is possible. I hope I have done that." Valera stepped closer, resting her hand on his arm. "You have, and more. I married a human for peace, but I gained a partner, a leader, a hero, and someone I admire beyond words." He turned to her, eyes warm, steady, and full of trust. "And I gained someone who sees beyond fear, who believes in possibilities, and who stands with me not because of duty, but because she chooses to. You have been my greatest ally, Valera." For a long moment they stood together, overlooking the galaxy they had helped shape. The stars twinkled as if acknowledging their efforts, silent witnesses to the dawn of a new era. The galaxy had seen human ingenuity in battle, but now it saw it in action across diplomacy, reconstruction, and inspiration. Humans were no longer merely survivors. They were leaders, innovators, and guardians of peace. And Valera understood something deeply profound. The galaxy had underestimated humans for centuries, and yet here they were, undaunted, brilliant, and capable of changing the universe itself. She smiled softly. "I married a human for peace," she whispered, "and now I see him as so much more. A hero of war, and a hero of hearts." Elias looked at her with a quiet, knowing smile, "And together we'll ensure that peace lasts. Not through fear, but through trust, courage, and the willingness to do what is right." As they stood side by side, watching the stars shimmer and the galaxy slowly heal, Valera felt a sense of hope she had never known. Humans had arrived not as conquerors but as partners, allies, and heroes, and with Elias Kane at the forefront, the future of the galaxy looked brighter than she had ever dared to imagine. The galaxy was vast, full of challenges, uncertainties, and mysteries. Yet one truth was clear. Humanity had earned its place not through brute strength but through ingenuity, courage, and heart. And in that truth Valera found her faith, her admiration, and her love not just for Elias Kane but for the extraordinary potential of her human allies. The stars twinkled. The galaxy breathed, and together, humans and Arctarians faced a future filled with promise. Peace was no longer a fragile hope. It was a reality forged through bravery, intelligence, and unwavering spirit.